Iona, the shifting sands of time. Beautiful Iona, the special light, a spiritual feel, and the sense of her always being central to Scotland's soul. And even as her role and emphasis switched with the shifting sands of time, and although that light is ever-changing, Iona continues to exude a quality of settled contemplation. Hard to define, yet so easy to feel. Scotland's spirit is revealed in different ways as befits her history. Men like Colm Cille, Adomnán, and George MacLeod have come at different times and added crucial definition to her story. Always a place of pilgrimage, you don't get there by accident. It's an island off an island off an island. Without Iona, Scotland's story might have been very different. Indeed, it might not have happened at all. What Iona means has changed over the years with those shifting sands of time, just as Scotland has. But always she has been sacred, and always she has shone with our spirit. Sacred places draw people, and Iona has always done that. Colm Cille, known also as Columba, is the single most famous. As is well known, he was an Irish monk from a high-born family in Donegal who came to Iona, perhaps in a kind of exile, to found his monastery on the island simply called the letter I in Gaelic. It is thought that he might have had involvement in the Battle of Culdrevny in 561, and exile and founding of the monastery in perhaps 563 was the consequence of this slaughter. Colm Cille had a livid scar on his side, which may have been a war wound. However, despite folk tales of his choosing Iona because it was out of sight of Ireland, the implication being that the Irish chapter of his life be closed forever, he is documented as making at least 3 returns to Ireland, one of them for several weeks or even months. He seemed to be a bridge between the warrior nobility to which he had been born and the need for peace through Christianity in the blood-soaked era of the 6th century. His fame and a sense of his spirit seems present even today on the special island. He is credited with evangelizing the Picts, who lived in the north and east of what is now Scotland, from his base here in the Gaelic kingdom of Dalriada, pretty much the modern county of Argyll. Whether this is quite right is a matter of debate, but there's no doubt that his life, and perhaps his legacy even more so, had a massive influence on what was to become Scotland. By the 7th century, both his church and the dedications to him spread across Dalriada, east and north over Pictland, and south to what would become Northumberland in England. He was a Christian institution with a hold that transcended kingdoms and cultures. Ideas were different then, and although his name, Colm Cille, means dove of the church, he was sometimes co-opted as a war god by both Celts and Vikings. Of course, it was a war that sent him to what is now Scotland, and his relics were battle totems. He had a book of Psalms, a psalter, which had been written in his own hand, perhaps even the cause of the battle that exiled him, which was kept sealed in a reliquary yet carried into battle after being paraded 3 times sunwise, a very druidic legacy, at the battlefield concerned. It was known as Caach, or the Battler. No doubt this made sense because of the war record of the supposed author of the Psalms, the Jewish King David. His relics were also famously carried, 7 centuries later, to tremendous effect into the Battle of Bannockburn by the army of Robert the Bruce in a reliquary known as the Brech Banach. He is credited with ordaining and consecrating a king of Dalriada in a Christian ceremony. This was Aidan McGowran, whose line leads straight down through history from this ceremony in 574 to the present king, albeit by hook and by crook. If this did indeed happen, and it's not completely accepted, then it is amongst the first of Christian king-making ceremonies recorded. The tradition was accepted, however, and is an indication of the power of Colm Cille's reputation. There is no doubt that Colm Cille is the single most prominent individual associated with Iona, and when you visit, you will, like everyone else who ever visited, contemplate his life and his enduring legacy. But would we know so much about him and be able to venerate his memory without Adomnán? No. It is to him that I personally find myself drawn. For me, he is the most compelling and fascinating of the 3 men most associated with this holy place. Adomnán was a descendant of Colm Cille's grandfather, so the same line as him, and he was Iona's 7th abbot. Adomnán is chiefly famous for writing his Vita Columbae, the life of Columba, without which our literature on Colm Cille would be much more sparse. In fact, the prominence of Colm Cille as one of the main saints of Scotland would be diminished without Adomnán's work. Colm Cille, Columba, could well have had his legacy reduced to one comparable with the other great saints of Celtic Scotland in that era, such as Maelruach, Donnan and MacLeod, who were of equal or perhaps even greater impact at the time. But they had no Adomnán to write a crucial hagiography to speak down the centuries for them. Adomnán is such a fascinating figure. He was appreciated, yet then reviled in his own time. Late in his life, his work towards adopting the Catholic Easter caused a rift with his own monks, and he was exiled back to Ireland. As always, he overcame this, and it looks like he was accepted back in Iona. But his character speaks to us through his own writing, as well as the records of his deeds. We can discern one of the great Celtic holy men, a man of huge talent and virtue who was capable of sticking to his purpose even in the face of anger and rejection. He was an influential author who wrote not only the life of Columba, but also on holy places, which contained information and discussion of many locations and their layouts in the world of the Bible. He interviewed sailors and traveller holy men such as Arculf of Gaul, as well as consulting and adding to the library of Iona itself, which in the pre-Viking era must have been considerable and impressive. The famous Venerable Bede was so impressed that he used Adomnán as his primary reference for 2 chapters of his seminal ecclesiastical history of the English people. Adomnán also influenced religious practices by highlighting a veneration for the Virgin, which was not a widespread devotion in the Western Church at that time. His influence can be heard via a hymn written by his younger contemporary, Cu Chumeni, the Hound of Memory, who composed on this theme, as well as a page in the Book of Kells, widely thought to be conceived on Iona, where an illustration seems drawn from a Byzantine image of the Virgin and Child. Ironically, perhaps, his life of Columba gives us a tale of banishing a river monster, perhaps representative of the old pagan sacred feminine, in the River Ness. This is often taken to be the first report of the Loch Ness monster, despite not being actually in the loch. His most famous contribution to society at the time was his Cain Adomnán, or his Law of the Innocents. He promulgated his law to protect non-combatants from wartime violence, and he negotiated a kind of signing up to it across Ireland, Dalriada and Pictland, in what must have been a stunning campaign of international diplomacy. 40 churchmen and 51 kings or warlords adopted, at least in theory, his Dark Age equivalent of the Geneva Accords or Convention. An amazing man whose spirit still, for me, pervades Iona. And George MacLeod, whom I suspect thought of himself as a latter-day Columba, was a charismatic 20th century preacher who renovated Iona and whose legacy has evolved into the religious community active there today. So whether you are a Christian or, like me, simply appreciative of wonderful places, Iona is always a place of pilgrimage, repeatedly so. The most important thing for me is to go there and take on the beauty, the sanctity, the light, and the feel of Iona. Iona is Scotland in her soul.